Today I'd like to talk a little bit about what is there to treat, what is actually disordered in maladaptive daydreaming. Some of you have heard me express myself in saying that it is basically a gift, a talent that some people have and some people don't. It is a capacity to imagine in very vivid terms fantasies that are made up and sometimes get a life of their own. And the immersion is so satisfying and complete that it feels as real as reality, although people maintain an ability and a capacity to differentiate between what's real and what is not. The problem is that this extensive form of daydreaming becomes an issue when people prefer to do it rather than perhaps engage in their academic or professional activities, or what is even more common, they would prefer socializing in their minds with imagined individuals and friends rather than engage in real life relationships. So, as a clinician, I think that I would first like to know what is the underlying issue, what is the underlying cause for maladaptive daydreaming. My sense is that there's more than one pathway that leads to maladaptive daydreaming. At first, when I first published the original 2002 paper on this concept, it was based on a group of clients that I treated that were all survivors of childhood neglect and abuse. And I thought the phenomena is some sort of a compensation for an intolerable life that they had developed as children and maintained as a main form of coping. Later on, studies that came out, 2 or 3 studies that came after that, showed that, in fact, childhood neglect and abuse could be a significant factor in the development of maladaptive daydreaming, only for a portion of people who are coping with this disorder, about a quarter. 1 out of every 4 people who struggles with maladaptive daydreaming would have had an adverse childhood. But the majority, in the majority of cases, this is not the main issue. Many people with maladaptive daydreaming talk about the addictive character of this behavior. It is so rewarding, to be in complete control of what's happening and to immerse oneself in a sort of an interesting life or an interesting set of circumstances that can be altered or stopped at will and feels very real, must be an experience that is extremely enjoyable. And indeed it is, to the extent that many people I've talked to talk to me about the addictive properties of this behavior. But even in addiction, even in the treatment of substance abuse or other forms of addictions, the question of what is the underlying issue is pertinent. One needs to work at quitting, but one also needs to understand what does this addiction serve, what function, what role. And this sometimes becomes obvious only after one gives up this form of addiction. So I would presume that many of my listeners who are engaging in MD, if forced to stop, would feel, of course, the urge to do it, the withdrawal symptoms, but some may also feel issues like boredom or loneliness that could serve as hints as to what is actually wrong in their lives. Addictive behaviors, such as nail biting hair pulling, are said to have features that are common to obsessive compulsive disorder. So here too, we're talking about a compulsion to do a mental behavior that is rewarded by the pleasure of the maladaptive daydreaming. So the treatment, if indeed there is an OCD mechanism at work here, the treatment conceivably could include a medication that is known to be helpful for OCD. And indeed, there's one single case study out there that reported a successful resolution of pathological daydreaming, maladaptive daydreaming, in a person that had a normal childhood. And this medication really made a difference, a big difference. So, but this result needs to be replicated, and I'm sure it will work only for those whose disorder indeed have these OCD features. How do we identify them? It's not quite clear yet. However, in talking with many people who are struggling with this disorder, it is apparent that for many, the underlying issues pertain to loneliness, shyness, introversion, social anxiety, social phobia, people feeling really uncomfortable interacting with other people, feeling inadequate or extremely uneasy when they experience themselves as a center of attention. Well, these are characterological issues. Usually, they could be also be laced with anxiety characteristics that could be perhaps helped with some medication. But issues of introversion, shyness, social phobia are also helped with cognitive behavior therapy that actually works towards enhancing skills and encouraging the individual to go out and polish up those skills, interact with other people, and slowly allow the automatic anxiety that accompanies social situations to dwindle and to reduce in intensity. As a principle, I believe that avoidance of feared situations perpetuate the disability. So people who are shy and lonely and have a very rich social life in their fantasies actually avoid the real situation. And this is why many of them are actually, despite the addiction and the pleasure derived from daydreaming, actually feel disappointed at themselves or feel a sense of emptiness even after a very long and satisfying series of imaginings, because apparently there's a limit to how much we can feel soothed and supported and loved by imaginary figures. So psychotherapy that will work at changing those characterological issues, and that will help clients dare and take chances in the real world, could be probably very helpful. And some of the people I've been talking to who share with me their maladaptive daydreaming experiences tell me that the only time where they do not daydream is when they are with others, when they interact with others. So there's a subgroup, by the way, of people who are fine socially and still like to daydream a lot. But they seem to be more in control over this, and they know that if they go out, call a friend, engage in some kind of a discussion or conversation, pick up the phone and call a friend, then that immediately stops their daydreaming and perhaps sets them off into some kind of an interactive experience that is incompatible with daydreaming. The other idea that is associated with the treatment of MD probably relates to this group that I originally thought comprised everybody who daydreams excessively, and these are the survivors of childhood neglect and childhood abuse. I have a great interest in dissociative disorders, and I know that the dissociative clients that I treat have resorted to disconnecting from the reality, turning it off, and going elsewhere in their minds, allowing other parts of their personality to deal with the hardship of life, but with other parts pretending that the adversity has never happened. This is also, you might say, a form of a fantasy. It's a negative fantasy because it is a fantasy about the abuse not having ever happened. So I thought that maladaptive daydreaming is some kind of a version of this. And for those particular clients who have been neglected and abused, it could be. So, but in treating these clients, first of all, one must clarify and understand again the role of this mental activity, in which some experience themselves as rescuers, as heroes, as competent, as warriors, as fighters. For many, these are really compensatory mental experiences that are extremely rewarding, particularly in contrast to what they've experienced in life and often the emptiness of their current social life. So for these group of clients, I perhaps would address the daydreaming at the very end of therapy and really work first at repairing their abilities to bond and attach themselves first in therapy and then with trusted others, and then slowly work with them towards giving up their preferred mental activity. In conclusion, I think that we have several ideas about how to work with this disorder. First, we need, of course, to establish it as something that the professional community would know and understand. And then we will have to be able to identify diagnostically the different subtypes of maladaptive daydreaming in terms of the different pathways that lead to it. And based on that, to try to derive some treatment ideas and treatment protocols and demonstrate their efficacy, their efficiency in research. So there's a lot of work to be done. But in the meantime, don't hesitate to talk to your therapist about, or to seek out help. Talk to them about this problem that you have. Be the one who disseminates information that it is real, that thousands out there are struggling with it and supporting each other in forums and support groups. And try to work with your therapist at identifying the underlying problems that perhaps are maintaining this disorder. So I wish you good luck, and perhaps I'll be back with some other ideas if I have anything new to say. Bye-bye.